Okay. Wow. Wow. We're back, my friends. We had a month off, 4 weeks to be exact. It was the long break of this 4-year quad. So a lot of reflection, a lot of contemplation, and honestly, just a lot of me just not doing jack shit. I thoroughly love being able to just have space to be. And if you were to put me in that kind of situation, maybe even a few years ago, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. And even over the 4-week break, forcing myself, I wouldn't say forcing myself, but just noticing even the space that I know that I've so long craved that I created. After a week or so, it was already like, oh, okay, like what am I supposed to do with myself here? And just trusting in the process of non-doing, not doing, beingness, and really just learning how to be. And so I spent a lot of time just honestly laying down on my couch, eyes closed, maybe a little music on in the background, and just dreaming. I think it's so important to be able to dream, to remember how to dream. And with that remembering, bringing up a little bit and letting out a little bit of the child energy to open up to different possibilities. We're in the winter season now, folks. We are in the winter season. And as far as the program goes, we are in the rest quarter of the rest year. So we ended off the course, lesson 30. We ended off in the peak quarter of the peak year, the peak of the peak, the highest expression of whatever the current level of potential was. So now in this rest, in the rest is now this expansion to new possibility. Okay. And with that expansion and new possibility is coming through the next evolution of what this whole unfolding journey is for me personally and for the life Gaia collectively. Okay. Because if you are one to listen to this, if you are listening to this, then I trust that you are aware of a lot of the shifts that are going on at a seemingly subtle level in some degrees, but on another level, very, very tangible and honestly just very intense. At least that's what I've been experiencing. And part of the reason why I see that I was called to take an extended period of time off, which again, for me, time off is just time away from the day-to-day, week-to-week structure. The structure is amazing, but there's times where even the things that are most beneficial, it's helpful to step away from just to see what holds up and what is really the most important. Because when you're just doing the same shit over and over again, even if you're making a lot of progress, it's easy to get caught in the same kinds of loops of just doing the same kinds of things, thinking the same kinds of ways, engaging with the same kinds of people. And so it's important to have space to drop all your bags, to drop all the ideas, to drop all the tools. And that is really what the principle of rest is. It's related to the air element, which is related to just ideas and possibility. If you think it's like somebody's very airy, their head is in the clouds. They have always got these great ideas, and there's all these different visions and dreams that they have. But if there's no grounding to it, which again is the other seasons, the other elements, if there's no grounding to it, then it's just a bunch of cool sounding ideas. And plenty of people have plenty cool sounding ideas that don't actually turn into anything, that aren't actually manifested. And on the other side of that, there's plenty of people that, and I was one of these people, that just do a bunch of shit because it makes you feel good that you're doing a bunch of shit to essentially distract yourself, even though you don't see it that way. You're just distracting yourself in the name of being busy. And everything may feel very serious and grounded and earthed, but there's no opening up to possibility. The air element isn't there. So obviously you need all of it. And that's why we have these different seasons, why nature has her different seasons. And it's why we can do well to harmonize ourselves with those seasons and the different elements and the different aspects that are brought up within each one of those seasons. So air, like I said, having to do with expanding possibility. Fire having to do with collapsing potential. So once you see all the different possibilities, you got to make a choice. It's the next step in the manifestation process, this alchemical process. And then from the fire element, from the intention, comes the water. The water is what creates the charge of the intention. And then the earth element, once you have that emotional charge to where you're like, man, I really got to go for this. I really got to make this happen. Then the earth element is, okay, what do I got to do? Which you notice in that process, the earth element comes last in a sense, even though it's ever present, pervading throughout it all. And it's, I see it more as kind of like a spectrum versus a hard cutoff between these different elements, and just like the seasons, there's not like necessarily a hard, all right, it's spring, there you go. It's a spectrum, and there's a little bit of microcycles even leading and flowing with the macro cycles. So either way, it's all included there, and just being mindful of these different areas and being able to honor what comes through and the action or non-action that is called upon through honoring these different areas of your life. So all that is to say that we are in this new season, my friends, and there are new developments underway. There are new projects being called forth to be birthed into the physical realm. And that's a lot of the work that I have been doing over this break. And now me here on this podcast is now beginning that process of grounding it into the actual physical acts to realize the intention that has been set through the opening up the capacity to see different possibilities, okay? And then really aligning those possibilities to what I feel like is my purpose and what I am here to do, and what we are all here to collectively do at some level or another. And so through that, I want to share now what is coming through and the next evolution of where things are heading for me personally. And then because the work that I feel called to do personally is to change the world at a collective level, then a lot of my own personal sharing and what I'm doing personally relates to what is going on at a collective level. Okay. So let's get into it, shall we? So just a little prelude, the podcast, what I'm sharing with you now, this is still my this is still my channel. This is still my space that I create for myself to explore. During these podcasts, like I do, there's still a little bit of that air element in there, in the sense that I'm still exploring, because, me kind of dreaming is one thing. And then now me communicating the dream is helping to step it down one step further. Even though still in the dream space, there's still some uncertainties, there's still some questions as to how things will specifically unfold. Me talking out loud and sharing and teaching in this way, just as I was doing with the course, is now the course is complete, y'all. By the way, lesson 30, the course is complete. But the same flow that I had with the course, I am drawing upon that same flow for this next project, which I'm excited to share. But I wanted to preface that with saying that these podcasts are me more a little all over, in the sense of exploring different possibilities, talking things through, thinking things through. And so if that's not what you're into, then this ain't going to be for you. Then I would just wait until the more kind of finalized products come out. And in the same way that the course, the lesson, was the culmination of all the exploration into a more straight to the point format. So what I am doing is I am taking, and this is just really the course applied in my life as I am learning and applying these different principles and seeing how things progress. So the question is, and has been, how do I combine these different elements of my life into a more and more unified whole? And I've been studying a lot more. That's been part of my rest phase here, is there's just been a lot more study. But, a little bit of Carl Jung in his process of individuation relates to that act of integrating more and more of what you are into a unified whole. So that's ultimately, if I were to put another label on it, that's the process that I am continuing to go through. And we're all continuing to go through at some level, whether we choose to engage in the process or not. The river is flowing to the ocean, as they say. So in the course, just a little refresher, in the course, we went through a process to help you firstly identify what are the key areas of your life that you want to nurture. What are the different life types, as I call them, these different primary roles that you play in this game of life. So for me, I've got the creator, the lover, or not the lover. Well, a lover is the other side of the king, because I like to look at things on both sides, the duality, because it helps me to clarify things. So the creator, and the other side of creator, is the disintegrator. And then there's the king. The other side of king is the lover. And then there is the teacher. The other side of teacher is the student. And then there's the master. The other side of master is apprentice, I think. Something like that. Okay, so creator, king, teacher, master. All right. So those are my 4 life types. And as you can see, these are just kind of big archetypes, just big spheres in my life. And through the process of the course, essentially we go through a system to help you to take those different spheres of your life and integrate them. And firstly, just identify what those even spheres are, what those different areas of your life are, and the most important processes, the most important things you can do to nurture those areas. So that's first and foremost. We got to get clear on these things, like building a map, I've said this before, if you want to build the map and be able to actually use it, you need to know where you're going and you need to know where you're at. Okay, so it's like in this map building process, we got to identify the ideal, where we're going, and then get really clear where we're at, because now we can start to map the territory and chart our way to that realization of our highest potential, whatever that may be for us. So I've got these different areas, and how it first begins is you're nurturing these different areas separately, even though they're all integrated into your life as a whole. And then if you think of each one of these areas as spheres, so the creator is a sphere of influence in my life. The king is a sphere, okay? If you think of them all as spheres, as you nurture those spheres, the spheres begin to grow. And so level one, if you remember, I've talked about the different levels of this game of life that is being designed and played simultaneously. Level 1 is athlete, level 2 is coach, level 3 is leader, level 4 is master. And one way to look at those different levels is really to look at your different spheres of influence in your life, or these different areas that you're choosing to nurture in your life. At the athlete level, again, you're just kind of identifying what they are, and you're creating systems to nurture each one of those individually that just integrates with your life as a whole. Level 2, the coach level, you are beginning to see how they are all connected. They're still kind of these separate spheres, but they've grown to the point of almost touching. Not quite, but they're almost touching, to the sense where your life and nurturing these different areas becomes this continuous flow. Like you're not having to really try to focus on this thing or that thing. You're just doing you. And by doing you, you're nurturing these different areas. And as those spheres grow, things actually begin to accelerate. Your progress actually begins to accelerate because you are becoming more and more efficient at your own process of individuation, of integrating these different areas of your life. And at the leader level, which is where I personally feel like I am moving into now, and I really, as I say this, I feel that I am kind of grounded at the beginning now of the leader level. And I think this break that I had and a lot of the reflection and contemplation and meditation and study that I was able to do and created the space for really allowed me to kind of launch myself fully and establish myself fully into the leader level. Okay. And at the leader level, things start to overlap. So the coach level, you're seeing these connections. The leader level, they are connected. They are connected. They are overlapping. And you're starting to see now how the nurturing of these different spheres of your life, there's a way in which they can begin to just become one thing. They're still, they're still slightly different areas. They're not just one thing like the master level, which I'm not there yet, so I can only speak theoretically from that. The master level, it is just one thing. Like there's no separation. There's no different parts of life anymore. It's just one thing. Okay. The leader level is kind of a stepping stone to that, where now these things are overlapping and you can see the connection very clearly. Okay. So all that is leading to what I'm going to share is what's coming through for this next evolution of my life and what I'm being called to create and to share with the rest of myself, with the world. So without getting into like damn near the whole course, because obviously you can just go and watch the whole course or go through the certification program, and we walk you through the course step by step so you have that life manifestation planner for your life. So without going through all that, I'm just going to share the connection points here and what that's all transpiring. And the cool thing is you have to allow yourself, going back to the air element, you have to allow yourself to be open to possibility, which is why I started this with saying that dreaming is so important. Because especially when it seems like, which at first it will, and at first it will be the case, that these different areas of your life are indeed different areas of your life that you are nurturing separately, even though you've got systems to help you nurture each one of those. There's still kind of this thing over here, this thing over here, this thing over here. So for me, and you'll see how this all ties together, the creator had to do with music, because each one of those life types, you identify, what's the key process? What's the key thing that if I just focus on this thing, it'll help me to realize the intention of that life type. So the creator for me has to do with creating music. Like it's not the only thing that I create, but that's the core thing, to where if I focus on that thing, then I know that I'm moving towards the ultimate intention of the life type itself, which is a reflection and an aspect of the ultimate vision for my life as a whole. And I do want to add a little side note here. The whole point of this structure is to ultimately transcend the structure, because it can be easy, when you start setting goals and you start doing this, it's very easy for the ego to start to get involved in what you think that you should want in your life. But a lot of times, even though you may end up transcending the original idea through this process, if you allow yourself to open to other possibilities, it's helpful to have an anchor with the structure, because that anchor actually, in my experience, it gives you more freedom to flow. Because it's like banks on the river. You have this container that you've created for yourself, that even though the river is going to the ocean and therefore the banks are going to no longer be required, there's still a helpful thing to have as you are navigating the journey to. And, kind of ironically, paradoxically, the structure is what allows more of the flow, because the structure, you have things in place so that you can more and more just trust the process of life. Okay. And the key thing with the different life types is, and especially the key processes related to the life types, is you're just doing what you love to do. I love creating music. I love exploring that part of me and expressing myself in that way. And so for me, that's a key process for me. Whereas if I just do that thing, if I just focus on creating music, I know a lot of the other little details are going to end up sorting themselves out as part of that life type. Okay, so that's the creator. The king is the key process for the king. For me, is just having what I call design time, where that is my contemplation time. That is kind of my dream time, but also it's also open to more tangible things like actually designing systems and seeing how different pieces fit together. And so I just call that design time. Okay. So that's the key process related to the king life type. And then the teacher life type, the key process for the teacher life type is hosting one, I call it a performance workshop, one performance/workshop each week. Because I've identified, as one, I love to teach. And as you'll start to see, as I'm even describing this, you can start to see how these things may start to be interrelated, how the music may be informing the performance in the workshop, and then how the design is helping to structure what that actually looks like. So doing one of those per week, whatever capacity that looks like, that's a key process related to the teacher life type. And then the master life type, the key process for me is training, just going to the gym and training, because doing that is a big rock, is this big thing that if I just focus on this thing, a lot of other things are included within that. Okay. And so those are the different areas, and you can see how, at first glance, they kind of seem separate, which, like I said, at first they will be separate. And like for me, it was like, okay, I was making music during this time, which wasn't necessarily related to anything else, but I was doing that at this time. I was training at this time. I was doing design time at this time. And then I was doing some kind of teaching or podcast or whatever at another time. And you can kind of start to see how they can be related, but there's, it's still kind of separate things. So a lot of the art of this process is seeing and really just imagining and dreaming and coming up with ways in which these different areas are connected. And that's what's coming through now. And that's what I spent the past 4 weeks of this break that I took doing. It's just, okay, how do these things interrelate? And the big culmination of that, which I'll share now, is creating a story that is acted out in essence, a TV series, if you want to call it that. So I'm literally, acting and writing the script to a show, a story that is being recorded. Okay. So that's like the big culmination. That is the way that I found to include all of these different elements. So the music is related to, so I'll back up just a bit. The story is, in a sense, an autobiography, but it's also drawing upon the archetypal hero's journey. And it's also including the different lessons that I went through in a more educational standpoint through the course. So the foundation has already been laid for this story, just one through me living life and experiencing the things that I've experienced and studying different things to kind of make sense of my experiences. And then the story, how the story is being told, is following this theme, and it's also aligned with these different elements. Now, I'm, doing my best to encapsulate essentially, what I spent many, many hours formulating, and now it's like, okay, we got to make this simple to be communicated. So let me just break down, it might be helpful. I'll break down my process here. So I kind of gave you a little glimpse of the big picture, and now I'm going to break down the process that leads to that big picture. And you'll see how all of my different life types are included within that. And you can also see an example of how you can take different skills or different things that maybe they're not a key process, but you can relate them to part of the key process. So you're still nurturing even these more minor processes or secondary processes. Like for instance, for me, writing isn't necessarily a key process, but it's still something that I feel called to include on a regular basis. So you can see how I tie these things in, okay? So essentially, each week, because establishing a cadence when you're doing these big projects is, I find, very, very important. So getting yourself on some kind of rhythm that is aligned to the flow of these different seasons, of these different phases, which are ultimately outlined, and I point over there, I got my whiteboard over there, it's ultimately outlined to this program. Like if you're following the Optimal Evolution programming, or if you're on the team, then you see how we have these different phases of the program, and how that relates to how we train our physical body, that again relates to all the different aspects of our lives. So what I do, my process is a weekly cadence where each week I create a new scene that is a part of each episode, that is a part of each season, that is a part of each part, or the season would be a part, that is a part of each book or volume, or in essence like but more or less a volume of life. Like a Harry Potter series, for instance, there's each book is a thing within itself, but it's part of this larger series of the whole thing, of the whole big story. Okay. So for me, each year is a different book, a different volume. And I say book because I'm simultaneously writing the book of the story, which then turns into the script of the story, which then turns into the actual scenes in the episodes, okay? So essentially, every week, how I kind of start the process is first I write the script of the scene. And I write the script of the scene in a way that is obviously, aligned with the story that is being told, but I also incorporate and align the scene to the different phases of training / life that I am in and as a collective Optimal Evolution is in. So this first scene, like this week, we're in the prep week, or we are in the rest week of the prep phase of the rest quarter of the rest year. So the big theme is rest, which, as I've said, is like the air element, expanding capacity, ideas, all that cool stuff. And so essentially, and I also use the different seasons or the different phases, so rest, prep, build, and peak. I also use those to inform the underlying message and the target audience that I'm wanting to communicate that message to. So at the rest level, this would be associated with what I would label as like the egocentric level. So it's like your just own personal relationship, your own personal narrative, which if you look at different structure stages of consciousness, the egocentric level is the lowest level. And lowest, I'm not relating that to meaning that it's better or worse. It's just the kind of the lowest level in terms of expansiveness. So the egocentric is very much about just personal will and survival. In different studies, they call this like sex and violence love, because you can also relate this to the 4 stages of love. Okay. So this is basically, it's like very reactional level of consciousness. And so when I'm telling the story or when I'm writing out the scenes, I'm also incorporating that kind of level of thinking, that level of consciousness to be relatable at that level. Because for me, each scene, each little segment, I see this just like the course that I did is very fractal, meaning that every little part contains the whole. Okay. So every little scene, I want to be its own story, its own completion in itself, even though it's just a small part of the larger story. Okay. So I'm going to share this week's scene with you so you can get a glimpse, and then we'll break it down a little bit. But I want to finish this process. So I write the scene out, and then, as I'm doing right now, then I do the podcast. Because when I do the scene, just as I was doing with the course, when I was writing the essence of the course, it was much more right brain, intuitive, to help me to really just explore and then collapse the potential. It's kind of like the fire element of like, okay, I have a very subtle grasp of where this is heading. Now let me bring it down. And for me, writing is the way that I found most helpful to do that. And then when I speak and I'm teaching, now it's taking the essence and really having to dig deeper and to see things from different angles and to expand on some things and to find ways to most effectively communicate these different elements. And for me, that's what this podcast is. So in essence, I can share the scene, and then through sharing the scene and through breaking it down a little bit, I can flesh it out a little bit more, while at the same time teaching principles behind it, which I can then transcribe, because my intention is I'll take this audio and I'm actually going to transcribe it and use it for the book. So that's why I said I'm simultaneously writing a book, because I'm using each one of these scenes as the different, basically just step-by-step sequential element or sequential process of writing the book. And then it's kind of like parables. As you'll see, like each scene is a little short, little mini parable, even though it's related to the bigger story. And then I can break down each one of those parables and kind of flesh it out a little bit more with the lesson behind it. You know, it's kind of like when you read poetry and you're kind of left for your own interpretation, which I think is great. Like, I think, and that's my intention is, you know, you have the parable, you can have your own interpretation. But then I also, because even when I'm writing these things, it's like I don't even fully know what is coming through until it comes through. So I like to have even my own interpretation to help me to understand what is coming through. It's like, you know, when I create music, I find it's best to just get out of the way and allow whatever is coming through to come through. And then afterwards, I look back on it and I'm like, oh, I kind of see what maybe at a more tangible, logical level was coming through that creation, through that expression. So it's the same thing with me when I write the different scenes, and then when I talk about it and I teach it and I explain it and I interpret it, it helps to expand it and give it even more groundedness. And then from there, I have an idea of a direction because I can kind of see the scene. So I have an idea of the direction of the music that I want to accompany that scene. Okay. And so that's actually, you know, later on today, as I'm recording this podcast, I'm going to the studio to then create the scene with music. Okay. And even, you know, I even might have vocals in there as well. It'll kind of depend. And that is going to be a part of the accompanying album that, again, is related to the story, related to the book. It's all tied together into one thing. So it's like, even though I'm doing a lot of different things, I'm really just doing one thing, which for me is the magic. It's the goddamn holy grail. Doing everything by just doing one thing and then systematizing that one thing so that it's fucking nothing. Okay? And then from the music, there's also going to be visual behind it. So I'll have some kind of visual art related to the music, related to the scene, okay? And then the kind of second tier culmination, the show, the film is the highest tier culmination, but the second tier culmination, because you'll see how this even relates to the Life Collective community and all that fun stuff. The second tier culmination is the performance workshop, which in a sense, again, this will take some evolution, but what I am envisioning is it will be an acting out of the scene, kind of like a play with the accompanying music, with the teaching infused. So it'll be like this story that's infused with the teaching that is kind of acted out in a way that is in essence creating this wider experience. Because I'm also looking at this in the lens of how can I be most effective as a communicator, as a teacher? How can I get more and more people involved in this process of their own individuation? And for me, it's like using the tools that are already shown to be highly effective, even if currently we are using those tools to fulfill maybe darker intentions, we can still use those same tools. So this is like entertainment in itself, technology in itself. We can draw upon these things, and even like music, which is more of a, there's two sides to everything. There's the duality, the positive and the negative, the light and the dark, to all these different elements. So choosing to align to the light expression while not rejecting the dark, but witnessing the dark, and then choosing to align to the light expression to create more light and love in the world. So that's what I see the performance workshop being, is kind of this culmination of the scene, of the lesson behind the scene, of the music and the art, and essentially creating this whole experience, which I will do weekly. And they'll be related to different topics, to, again, different audiences, different targets, different messages, because I'm, again, aligning it to the program as a whole in the different phases of the program. So a rest week, the message may be more resonant at an egocentric level in the way that I relay it, in the way of what the message even is. And then the next level, the ethnocentric level, which be related to the prep phase, that would be more aligned to that level of speaking to people at that level, or speaking to that part of each person within the wider scope of all the different levels and all, the different messages. Because, for instance, just to give you like a tangible example, if I am wanting to focus on the topic of just overall health and well-being, at the ethnocentric level, the message may be, you want to lose weight and just feel good and look good naked. Like, it's just a very, personal, ego-driven desire that could be fulfilled through this teaching or through these tools that I'm providing, okay? Whereas the next level up, the message could be something like, again, related to health. It could be something like, join this community of like-minded people all working to better themselves. Okay. And I could be saying, like, the actual teaching could be the same exact teaching, but that message is more geared towards ethnocentric, in the sense that us versus them. It's like, now we have a community, and now, you can be with us and we can be better than them. Because, again, some people, that's the language that they use. And so you can draw upon that language to help invite people into the story, to better themselves, to partake in the process of the individuation. And then the next level up would be the world centric. So the message may be something like, if you want to change the world, you got to change yourself. Okay. And then the next level up would be the cosmic centric, the universe centric level that kind of sees all of it. And then so the message might be something like, if you are aligned to engaging in your spiritual evolution, then optimizing your physical health to be the temple of your spiritual development, to help realize more and more that you are, that may be enticing to somebody at that level. So you can see, like, I essentially said the same shit, but I changed the message depending on who the target audience is, related to the different phases of training, or training, but it's just different phases of the program as a whole, which includes all the different aspects of life, which, again, you can even apply it to how you are marketing, as I'm doing with this. All right. So that's the performance workshop. And then by that time, I'm working with my buddy, Johnny Nature. Shout out to Johnny Nature, my brother. And we are then kind of taking the scene and then actually like filming it and creating the show and the editing and mapping out. And, we got a script and like all that stuff that would be involved in that. So it's like I'm acting. And you can see, just as I went through that process, you can see how all of these things are related into one process. And then the performance workshop actually turns into, and really all of it, but especially the performance workshop, turns into then an invitation into the community. And actually you kind of get into the community, and then that's how you get access to the performance workshop. But then that turns into this deeper invitation into the community, which then ultimately for me leads to the certification program. Just like full transparency, that's the kind of the big thing, where the journey that I am leading people on is leading to the certification program. Because for me, that is the best way that I know that I can help you at a like individualized, custom level. And that also then feeds back into the community, because it teaches you, it not so much teaches you, but shows you your genius and helps you to express that in ways that help to serve yourself and others at the highest level possible, which then within the community, there's opportunities to be able to do that. Okay. To then also, receive all of the blessings, the offerings, the contributions of the community as a whole, so that ultimately we can play this game of life, because that's like the big overarching thing, is we're playing this game of life and the different life attributes, and then having different games that we play within that, and different tests for the different life attributes, and all of that fun stuff. So all that is to say, it's all linked together. And me and you taking the time to create the space to dream of a possibility that incorporates all of these different elements of your life, that is the work. Like for me, that is the real work that needs to be done. Because again, I can just keep training, which I've done. I can just make music and just make music for the sake of making music, which I have done. I can just teach for the sake of teaching. Like, it can still be these separate things, but it only takes you so far. Your process of individuation, your genius is found through the nurturing and then interconnectedness of all these different areas of your life. Okay? As you simultaneously move more and more into the flow of life. Okay? So with all that said, I want to now share scene 1 of episode 1. And I'll have a little bit of a synopsis of it, a little bit of a breakdown, which is kind of a spoiler alert in a sense, but honestly, I don't give a fuck, because I'm still uncovering the mysteries even as I'm going through this process, and even as I dive very deeply into different interpretations and things like that. Okay? So I've got it right here. I'm going to read it to you without comments first. I'm just going to read it straight. So this is episode 1, The Awakening, scene 1, Something Different. It's winter. While the surface seems to be at rest, Earth is dreaming of a new possibility. And as I move deeper into my own reflections, I see the dream in its full expression. How is it that one seed can grow an entire forest? I pose the question to no one in particular. Because the forest is already within each seed. The answer comes from no one in particular. So if I just plant the seed, nature will take care of the rest? I continue to muse with the giver of answers. Yes, assuming you remember the nature of yourself. Meaning, nature dreamed of a mind smart enough to discover and share her secrets. So, in other words, nature created me so that I can learn how to create with nature? Precisely. And your capacity to create with nature rests upon your capacity to recognize the nature within yourself. I pause. There's a faint breeze, and I hear the rustling creak of several branches nodding in affirmation. I wake up from the dream. The light in the room grows as the new day establishes its presence. It's winter. So that's scene one, my friends. And so obviously you can take that and maybe there's some different visuals that come up. But again, I'm going to give you a little bit of my own synopsis of it. So this is the very first scene of this entire story. And what I wanted to encapsulate, the intention that I wanted to put forth within that scene is something that I intuitively kind of knew, but then really was drove home with the Gene Keys, was the ending is already present before the beginning even begins. Meaning the highest expression of whatever the potential is already there before the seeking of whatever that highest potential is. And that's why it relates, like the seed, the entire forest is within each seed. The entire universe is within each individual part of it. And so the way that the scene is played out is it's this dream that I have of really myself, but it's kind of like my future. It's like I'm dreaming of the end of the story, of the culmination of the entire journey. Even though I don't recognize this, obviously, because I wake up from the dream. I'm like, oh, it's just a dream. But the main teaching behind it, which again, this relates to the lesson. The main teaching behind it is that your highest potential already exists right here and right now. And it's not so much that you need to go out and search for and find this thing because it's already here. It's more of a recognition of what is already here. But the paradox, and again, this is the 63rd gene key is called after, or in the I Ching, it's called after completion. And then the 64th, which as you'll note is after 63, the 64th I Ching hexagram is called before completion. So it's very curious that after completion is actually before completion. Because in a sense, and this has been my own experience, it's like even though your potential already is there, present, before you ever even consider going on the journey, you need to then go on the journey and face all of the different challenges, receive all of the blessings and the treasure along the way, and grow and develop and evolve the whole way to finally realize and recognize, remember that what you have been searching for along the journey has been with you the whole time. But if you had not gone on that journey, your capacity to recognize that wouldn't necessarily be there, because in a sense, you need to discover everything that you are not by going on the journey to finally remember and have the recognition of what you have been the entire time. Okay. So this first scene is really like just an opening up to that. And it's set in winter, and this reflection and this expansive, opening to different possibilities is dreaming, because in the winter, nature is dreaming of new possibility. And so this opening up to possibility as the opening scene, then, it contains the whole within it. It contains the conclusion already planted within it. And then I wake up from the dream. And to me, it's just a dream, in the way that we think of a dream. It's just a dream. Okay, whatever. I just had a dream. Cool. Not realizing that seed has already been planted. It's already there waiting to germinate. And then, which I haven't yet in this scene, but then the call to adventure comes in the hero's journey. Okay? So again, we will see what scene 2 brings of episode 1, and how this is laid out. There's essentially going to be 4 scenes in each episode, although that may not always be the case, but that's just kind of a general theme. So we are going to see how this continues to unfold. But that is the story for this lesson, this teaching. Okay? And this is what I will be kind of playing out and acting out within the workshop, which I will be hosting. Well, this won't be out by the time that happens, but that'll be tomorrow for me. So, there it is, y'all. There it is. That is this first episode back. Very grateful to have this space, this capacity to share with you all, and I'm really excited for this new adventure. And I also want to greatly encourage you to, at the very least, tap into the free course. Like, if any of this of what I shared has like drawn any kind of interest of like, how do I do that? Or, what kind of systems are there available? What kind of tools are there available? Because, just like in the course, it's not like I'm presenting anything necessarily novel or new. For me, it's just the synthesis of it all that is novel and new, and how you can use the structure as a template to then create your own structure for you and your own personal journey that you are on. Okay, so I highly, 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 highly encourage you go to do the free course, and then or you could just bypass that and just sign up for the next cohort of the certification program, because that's where we just apply the free course and help you to build out your life design map for yourself, which that might be a good title. That's got a little ring to it. Your life design map, which I've been calling the Life Magic Manifestation Planner. So we'll see what ends up coming through. Yeah, that's it, y'all. Thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you next time. Peace.